joined in the studio, but also online by a brilliant array of guests. Chelsey Baker, of course, founder of National Mentoring Day. October the
27th.
27th. Put it in your diaries now.
Can I just say, though, it's a Sunday this year because we had a leap year, so organisations will be taking part on a Friday, the Monday,
or on a Sunday. We can be there, that's all right. OK. Beaming in, loud and clear, is Dr. Lynda Folan, Managing Director of Inspired Development Solutions, a Doctor of Organisational Psychology. Lynda, can you hear us?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us. Matt Phelan is the co-founder of the Happiness Index. Matthew Phelan, well, he's also the founder of the Humans Community, host of the Happiness and Humans podcast, and author of not just Freedom to Be Happy, but also another book as well. Happiness Index. I've got both of these, actually. By today's employee actions, emotions equal tomorrow's business success. Also, one of the nicest people we've ever had at Elite Business Live, by the way.
I paid him to say that £5.
Well, that's why you're always welcome here. Next up is another friend. I'm just declaring interest as we go here, really. But founder and CEO of The Dots, Pip Jamieson. If you don't know this already, The Dots was described by Apple, if you've heard of them, as networking for the modern world. And it's sort of superpowering other communities to make the most of their connections. I suppose you're the sort of now increasingly white-labelled force behind Community Connection, aren't you, Pip?
That is correct.
Come on, let's name drop a bit. Whose community are you
So we power, for example, Soho House's professional community, Soho Works. So if you download the Soho Works app, that's our technology. Days Media, which is a media brand, we power their professional network. So we basically look after private professional networks for a number of massive brands, including Apple.
Including Apple. Well, speaking of Apple, that's one of the many companies that Rob Wall has worked with, leadership coach and consultant. You've worked with Apple, you've worked with the United Nations and the British Army. Yes, sir. Interestingly, though, entrepreneurial background, you're one of the founding team members of that global unicorn startup, Glorify, which I think raised $84 million.
Correct. Yeah, Series A funding.
Series A funding. But crucially, in your tenure, I've looked into this a bit, you took them from 50 downloads a week to over 5 million downloads in 24 months.
Yes, correct. Content creator, head of content. So
praise be.
Great journey.
No, well, thank you all for being here. So here's a question. And by the way, I haven't prepped our panel because it's very fresh here, Elite Business Live. But here's the question. How do you build a company that people want to join? And I want to get your instinctive first answer to that. And I'm going to start with you, Rob, and then jump around.
Okay, I'd like to frame this up with a conversation I had when I was maybe 22, coming out of university, and I was working for a banker in the city, and he asked me about my plans for the future. And he said, look, Rob, you've got to make a decision. Either you're going to spend your life building somebody else's vision, or you can focus on building your vision. And that stuck with me. I thought, fantastic advice coming from a really well-meaning place. But as I thought about it, as I grew on, those two things do not have to be mutually exclusive. You don't have to build your own vision or choose to build somebody else's. What I think is if you have a vision large enough, you can recruit and attract people if you can communicate to them that the vision they have for their lives will fit in for the overarching vision that you have for your company or your business. So they don't have to be mutually exclusive.
That is such a powerful combination of two very big ideas. Dr. Lynda, I'm going to come to you on this. How do you build a company people want to join?
I think essentially, if you're going to build a company that people really want to come and be a part of, you've got to create a substantive underlying culture that encourages people to want to give their passion and their energy to it. I don't think you can create an environment without that. Key to any organization's success and to the topic that we're talking about right now, retention, all of that, is foundation on the ability to build the right organizational culture, whether that's a small culture for a startup organization or a culture that you grow into a larger organization as it grows and develops. It's the foundation.
Foundations, well, you've built something from the foundations upward and upward. What's your top tip on this? I want to get some sort of pithy thought starters, and then we're going to dig in a bit.
I think from the beginning of the Dots, we always had like a very clear ethics, values, and social purpose. And that made it incredibly easy to hire. So for example, those that don't know us, our algorithm is actually based on positivity and kindness. And having that in our DNA, especially with the younger generation coming through, they want to make money, but they also want to have a positive impact. And so that not only helped us attract people, but definitely retain them as well.
So in truth, so a couple of times we've talked about side hustles in our couple of days at Elite Business Live. Where are you on side hustles? Do you want to know?
Oh, I love knowing, yeah. So, no, I've always been really supportive of the team. I've had numbers of team members who've become coaches and then started coaching on my team, which was amazing. So, yeah, no, I'm really supportive of side hustles. But also, if you actually give team members really interesting work to do, sometimes the work actually becomes more fun than the side hustle.
Absolutely, and therein lies sort of Rob's sort of combination of those ideas, right? So Matt, you've set up offices, around the world. You continue to have brilliant people join you. What's the secret?
So I'm not going to go any secrets. I'm just going to share with you the data, if that's okay, Ollie. I think two things are needed. One appeals to the heart and one appeals to the brain. And certain businesses at the beginning, they tend to reflect the founder. So if it's like a heart-driven founder, maybe that's what the culture will reflect. If it's someone who's more rational, it might reflect that. All of us as human beings, we're attracted by both and we need both. Yeah. So I'll give you a couple of examples of something that would be really important on different levels. So one thing that people think that is a heart-related thing is purpose. Whereas purpose is actually related to the brain, it's actually what we need for direction. So although from the outside let's think of something that might attract you like kindness, you think, oh, this has got a kind culture. That's a heart-related thing that is really important. But human beings still need to know what the purpose is. And I think there's a sub-point on multi-generational here as well, is that it gets sort of lumped in and says, someone said to me recently, a HR director of a FTSE 100, oh, when are the new generation going to get with it and start working hard? Is what they said to me. Well, we won't get in that today, but the more you look at the data, is all the generations want purpose, but what has changed is context and technology around what people want. So people have always wanted purpose. It's not an employee thing. It's what we want in life. So I would say appeal to the brain and the heart, Ollie. Right.
Really happy to hear you say that. So, Chelsey, quick thought starter on this, because you've seen organisations attract talent all over the world.
Absolutely, and the beauty is I've been, allowed to see the internal workings of these mentoring programs, and I was researching Nike and what they have done is just, it's incredible. So I think certainly for, Gen Zs, the millennials coming in, they need to see that if they actually take a job at this company, that there is a career progression strategy in place, and usually that's done through mentoring, that they're not just going to be left without anything. Mentoring really has to come from CEO level down. It has to be, it's a mindset and a methodology to come from leadership, and it has to, then it trickles down and filters down.
Well, you'll forgive me for saying I'm absolutely shocked to hear that your answer is mentoring, Chelsey. So let's get back on this sort of data front just very briefly, because basically Elite Business Lab, we want to know your questions on talent, right? So I'm going to go unusually earlier to get more questions in this session, because you can go in any direction you want. But Matt, $1 million question: what makes for a happy workplace?
So let's just go through. So it changes from country to country, it changes from person to person, but I'll just roll up a couple of the top ones that I think everyone should be aware of. So the number one driver in every single country, we measure in about 100 countries, is positive relationships. It's the number one driver of happiness at work. A few other things below that I think are worth pointing out. And some of you may have read a report recently that says employee benefits don't improve happiness and culture at work. You may or may not have read that. It's caused a bit of a stir in the industry. But what it actually does reflect a lot of our data, which is the stuff that makes you happy wasn't invented in the last 200 years by HR tech companies. They are human things. So another one to tell you about is acknowledgement. Ollie's great at this, acknowledged us all on stage, talked about a bit of what we do and how we know each other. So that's another one. And that can't be like militarized into like automating an email every Friday to your team saying thank you. It has to be heartfelt. The one I won't go through all of them today, but one, although positive relationships is the number one, sometimes people ask, where is the place to start? So I would always say, which is in the top 4, psychological safety. So if someone is joining your company or thinking about joining your company, I think your number one role on day one is not to get them a branded bottle on their desk for day one, although that's cool, it's fun, and if you provide that, that's great, it's really useful. But number one job is to make them feel safe.
Right. Now, forgive me, only because another panelist has spoken about this before. Okay, so human beings more important than jelly beans. I get it. All right. All right. Okay. Rob, this is a subject close to your heart on psychological safety. Take us briefly into the how.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in a world where we're essentially goal obsessed, especially in companies and businesses, we want to hit our targets. We've got the pressure of the final quarter, every 3 months, it's just all consuming. I think we need to be growth-oriented people in a goal-obsessed world. And that doesn't necessarily mean that your company takes the head of marketing through a certification program so that they have their level 2 certificate at the end of the program. It means you sitting down with them individually and asking them the question, would your team follow you if it wasn't based on position, but it was based on permission? See, there are very different layers of influence, but the most basic layer, we might talk about this a little bit in management, but...
Rob, I don't yet understand what you mean by based on permission. What does that bit mean?
So many people follow a leader or a manager based on the position because they get paid to do it.
Yeah.
But there's a higher level of influence whereby I give you permission to lead me because I follow you because of who you are.
Understood.
And so the question we should all be asking if we're starting something up, business leaders, team leaders, is this: would you follow you?
Wow. That's one of the biggest ideas we've heard. Would you follow you? Wow. I don't know what Pip Jamieson makes of that in a second. But Dr. Lynda, let me bring you in here, because I don't want the takeaway from Matt's earlier comments being there is no difference between the generations. That's not what you're saying, Matt. You're saying purpose cross-cuts generations.
I'm saying that sometimes people say that purpose is a new thing that the younger generation are interested in, but when you actually look into the data, you realise, and technology's opened that up.
So that is loud and clear. So I guess in that case, Lynda, how do you think Gen Z will change and is changing the world of work? Because this is something you've thought and worked on.
Yeah, so I just want to add to what's already been said around satisfaction at work. The longest running piece of research ever to be done globally is a piece of research out of Harvard, which looks at life satisfaction. And the 2 most important things for life satisfaction, the first one is connection and the second one is purpose. So I fully agree. I don't think Gen Zs have created this idea of purpose or connection in a work setting. I think our generation's ongoing, and this piece of research has been going on for 75 years. So they are both essential in a work setting. It's utterly essential that we create an environment where people have purpose as well as connection in a work setting.
Yeah.
In terms of
additional,
sorry,
you carry on, Lynda. I can see you're going.
In terms of the Gen Zs, I think they're just going to be more determined about getting what they want. I don't think that the older generations have had a difference in terms of focus on purpose or connection. We've just given up a lot, and the Gen Zs are not going to be as tolerant. They're definitely going to demand something different of us in a work setting. My view is they're going to change our workplaces dramatically over the next 5 to 10 years.
All right. And what's your favourite example or prediction on that then, Lynda?
Well, the prediction is that, first of all, they are going to find it more challenging to work in a very controlled environment that a lot of our organizations still run. So if you have got a high command control organization, you're in for trouble with the Gen Zs. My prediction is you won't be able to retain them. I would say also, Yeah.
Okay, so I want to get more questions in. High Command Control Organisation. Rob, well, you work with the Army. How are they going to work with Gen Z?
Yeah, that's a great question. Might be above my pay grade, actually.
Well, in general terms.
Yeah, I think that we've got to be really practical in terms of meeting people where they're at. We can't pretend that there isn't a gap right now between the generations. One of my favorite books at the moment is called The $1 Trillion Wealth Transfer, about how the greatest transfer of wealth that's ever being passed down is happening in this generation. And so I think the first thing we've got to do as leaders and as managers is acknowledge the gap right now between the generations and then think, what language am I going to use? Whatever the industry, the army, or whether a tech startup, what language am I going to use that's going to create a culture that people can buy into?
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll just say on that, if I may, you embody the culture as the leader, and so you cannot declare something that you yourself aren't demonstrating. So I would say the power of personal example is everything, and if your private life isn't congruent with your public presentation, there will be no power.
All right, so let's pick up on that word, Pip, culture. What have you learned at the Dots about, and what are you learning about building a company culture?
Yeah, I love what you were saying about, psychological safety and thank yous and everything like that. So on a really practical level, we've always had a zero tolerance for politics. It just eats a business alive. Linked to that is I had to get good at, one bad apple can rot the barrel. So I found it very tough in my early days letting people go. I'm actually very good at it now. But it's so important for an organization that you don't let that festering person stay. Give them a chance, but warn them and then get them out. We have also been very clear in terms of our values. So one of our values is positivity. Now, I don't mean positivity for positivity's sake. I want people to challenge me, but I want it to be constructive and non-political. So we screen for values fit before we even screen for skills fit to weed out any of that from the beginning. And then finally, one of the top tips and the things I love most in my organization for thank yous, and this sounds a bit airy-fairy, but everyone loves it, is we do Friday thank yous, where everyone in the organization thanks someone else in the organization for something they've done that week. And the one rule is no one's ever allowed to thank me.
Well, that's typically humble, isn't it? Now, on that, though, screen for values. Is that a conversation? Are you using a tool for that? I mean, I'm not being flippant, but help us understand how you do that.
Yeah, so we have 6 core values, and we've basically developed a set of questions which are quite personal, actually. And so, for example, one of the best ones has been, how would your co-workers or current colleagues describe you? Oh my God, I've had some terrifying answers to that one. And how would your friends describe you, and how would your family describe you? And it's amazing what people start talking about. Another one I do is, because I have really bad dyslexia, and I say, like, one of the challenges that I have is that I have dyslexia and I have to be really open about it, and the team have to support me on that. And what is one of your biggest challenges? And it's amazing what comes out.
Really nice.
Yeah. And
but led by that vulnerability, if I can put it like that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a really positive experience, and then I've had other people saying, oh, I'm just really aggressive. And I'm like, great, we know you're not right for this organization.
Yes, I'm just massively intolerant. Okay, all right. Thank you, Pip. Let's bring in some questions. I'm going to ask the team just to refresh the screen that we're seeing for questions coming in from outside the studio. Thank you. So they're nice and fresh. I can see an offer there. Thank you. And right here in the front row. Why don't we start up here? Feel free to say who you are, and you don't have to.
Hello, my name's Rachel and I run a marketing agency in Sussex. I do a lot of mentoring, some paid, some unpaid. And the thing that I sometimes struggle with is not getting too involved in the doing. So we have, so many hours, and I offered lots of advice, and then it gets to the point where we need to fill those hours, if it's a paid program, for example, and sometimes I'll end up actually doing a marketing plan or, something else. So how can that be avoided so that you're really just guiding, like mentoring should be, rather than actually doing?
Okay, have you got a sense of that, Chelsea?
Yes.
Okay, just hold that thought. Forgive me. Thank you. Why don't we quickly pick a question off the front row here in this lovely blue jacket?
Hi, Sarah Hamilton-Gill. Excuse me, I run a programme called Leap into HR Consulting, taking HR professionals from corporate into consulting. Now, my question for you is, a lot of the work that you do is probably based on HR being behind your programmes, etc. I've seen so many people exiting corporate life from an HR perspective. Yesterday, I looked on a database, which I can't tell you which one it is, 900,000 HR professionals in the UK are looking for a job. So with that mindset, and they're obviously clearly not happy or engaged, how are you going to achieve what you want to achieve?
Yeah, so bearing that in mind, all right, thank you. Chelsey, on that sort of, drawing lines sort of question, not getting too, bogged down, I suppose, in commitment.
Absolutely. Mentoring has to work for you. It has to work for both parties. And of course, that happened to me in the beginning as well. That's why we have a National Mentoring Day. I was mentoring 24 hours a day, practically 7 days a week. So it has to fit in with your schedule. Have your monthly planner and think, right, how many sessions can I cope with where it's not actually affecting me and causing me to burn out? And because the problem is that resentment will kick in and you'll feel like you're just giving everything.
Yes. Yeah.
It has to work with you. So how many sessions could you cope with? How many mentees could you cope with? Are you mentoring the right type of company? Because, I speak in Silicon Valley and mentor underserved communities. I could do that every single day. I just love doing that. So have a look at the types of people and companies that you're mentoring, and does that fit with what where your passion lies?
Yeah, those hard-up communities that are just down to the last $10 million, I find, in Silicon Valley these days. I can barely get on the ladder.
This is outside, Ollie, outside.
I know. So just briefly, while we've still got you, Chelsey, with the mic, so to speak, your opinion on free mentoring versus paid mentoring. I'll ask you to be pithy on that, forgive me.
Yeah, I mean, there's a cost borne to all types of mentoring, whether or not, it's like the Startup Loans Programme that we were talking about. There's a cost that is actually being paid for. So many organisations that have free mentoring programmes, there is a cost associated that is being borne by somebody else. So, I've had wonderful free mentoring. I've had wonderful paid mentoring. It depends where you are, what type of mentoring you're looking for. People will say, we get hundreds of emails, I need a mentor. In what? What you got first? If you want to mentor, that's great.
And on the paid point, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Think about, can you imagine if you've got access to a CEO who's mentoring and, he has an hourly rate, but investing, we heard that from the panel yesterday about paying and investing in yourself. Yep. Imagine if that can save you, thousands of pounds in failures and mistakes.
Thank you, Chelsey.
So absolutely, right. Both work at different times.
Thank you. Now, Matt, what about on this question about these disengaged?
We didn't know this question was coming, but I do have some data to share on it. HR professionals regularly come into the bottom 2 of unhappiest professions in in the happiness index, specifically data set. And it comes back to why. Why is that? Because it's different for different professions. And the biggest surprise in why HR professionals are unhappy is the word impact. So it's not the same for every role, but HR professionals' happiness tends to slide if their work doesn't have impact, which you'd think would be the same for every role, but it's not. There are different things that attract people to different types of roles.
You'd also think that it wouldn't be the HR people. Presumably, the clues of impact ought to be right in front of them.
Yeah, but I think there's another issue here, which is businesses that are set up in a command and control structure, going back to the point over here, end up redirecting all the problems into HR, which means HR tend to be aware of all the really bad stuff that's going on in an organisation. And I'm not a therapist myself, but I believe if you are a therapist, part of the rules is that you have a therapist to help you as well, or something like that. Yeah. And I think sometimes HR, and this is why this event's so good, HR are really bad, I would say, compared to marketers as an example. Marketers are really good at meeting up and mentoring each other. I think specifically HR is quite bad at getting out of the office. So I think there's the impact point, but I also think there's the sort of mentoring is one part of it, but I think spending time with your peers is really important.
Yeah, and thank you, Matt. Lynda, did you want to come in on that briefly?
Yeah. Yes, having spent many years running teams in human resources, I can give you the insight on that very definitely. The issue is that all the problems in the organization end up in the HR team's lap. So what you end up is they see the worst end of the organization and hear all the dramas that are going on in each aspect of the organization. Yes. And unless they're really good at looking after themselves and managing their own resilience, they will fall over. So yes. You're seeing a result of an organizational challenge. Everything funnels in there. And then, unfortunately, unless the individual is looking after their resilience levels, they're not going to actually cope, and they will fall over and start looking for other jobs.
It's such a powerful question. It goes back to Chelsea's thesis. Who guards the guardians, right? Who's looking after people who look after us? It's so circular. We've got time for a final question. It might be Lawrence. It might have got that wrong. Forgive me.
There's a lady there.
Oh, OK, forgive me. Well, let's get both then, briefly and briefly. Thank you.
Thanks, Ollie. Very, very quickly, thank you to the whole panel. Been excellent. I've heard you all speak before. Love singing again, Pip. Met you a few years ago. Very, very quick point. I actually partner with a side hustle, and I have done for 26 years. About 5 or 6 years ago, we embraced mentoring big time across the whole business. The performance on everyone has gone skywards. To an extent, we've got a record year last year, it's carrying on this year as well. However, not everyone wants to be mentored. Oh. How can we change that attitude?
Oh, very interesting. OK, so thank you for that. Is it Lawrence? I think it's Lawrence. Yeah. And the final question here, and I'm going to guide you all to that small number, which is our remaining time. So we're all a team on this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I'm going to direct this question to Chelsey. You earlier conveyed that you were never mentored before. So what was your big why? And for everyone on the panel, how do you protect your emotional intelligence being a mentor? Thank you.
Oh, gosh, what a brilliant question. OK, thank you. Chelsey.
I'll come to this question first. I think, yes, not everyone wants to be mentored. And I think that's because they haven't experienced it yet. OK, so what I would recommend is definitely offer a free taster session. You know, it's about the pairing, it's about what, you have to find out first what they're interested in. What do they want to learn? Are they struggling? Are they having challenges? This is where your reviews can come in. Are they struggling with AI or tech?
And so this is, I'm not being cheeky, that is a good and easy answer to say it's because they haven't experienced it yet, okay? So the tougher question is, the thing that's put them off mentoring is mentoring.
They don't like being told what to do.
No, but that might not be the end of the story.
Yes.
Another answer might be rebooting their feelings about mentoring. And I guess that is potentially a door to open. How do you do that?
That would be in a motivation awareness session within your organization. You said you'd had great success implementing the program, showcasing the successful mentee-mentor story, whether or not you do that with a free lunch. You could do that with, at a meeting.
Yeah, this is good. This is good, Chelsey. Let's give it to Pip. Here we go.
Yeah, I mean, also there's another interesting approach. I love mentoring, by the way, and I have mentors, but I also am part of something called a Cube, which is part of the YPO Young Professionals Organization. Yeah. And this is where 8 of us, and we're all similar levels, catch up on a monthly basis and share our deepest, darkest fears about what's happening on our career. And you're never allowed to give advice. And I think some people resist mentoring because they don't want to be advised. Instead, what you're learning, you're having to share experiences. So I'm having a problem with my boss. So your peer then goes, I'm having a problem with my boss. This is how I'm managing it. I'm having a problem with my boss. This is how I was managing it. Yeah. And then you get 8 perspectives. So I think sometimes people just don't want to be told what to do. That's fine. But there are other ways to get mentored that can be peer-to-peer.
But it's guidance as well. We don't tell as mentors. Yeah. We guide, we share experience.
And we're just about to be out on time, but I don't want to forget our final question here, Chelsey. So did you have something else just on, particularly on sort of protecting our sort of emotional intelligence really around this?
I think that we all have to. You know, life is so pressured, life is so busy, we all have to protect our emotional intelligence. So, you know, you can, when you're mentoring someone, you give over what you feel you want to give over. You know, it's definitely one of the key things in mentoring is setting boundaries. Yeah. You know, so.
Yeah, thank you. Well, one of those boundaries, Kairos versus Chronos. We're going to go with Chronos. we've run out of time. I wish I could capture this Kairos moment forever, but we can't. Chelsey, Matthew, Pip, Rob, and of course, Lynda, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, everybody.